Hello, Echo Units. My name is Rox Titan. Today we're going to be going over the Week 7 match between Kangorillaz and Flare. This is a really good match, so if you haven't watched the whole thing, I do recommend going and watching the VOD yourself because it was extremely hype. But unfortunately, if I were to cover the whole thing in a video, it'd probably take me like 3 hours, so I'm not going to do that. But anyway, I recommend you watch it, and let's get into it. So first clip, right at the beginning of round 1, we see the joust happening. And the important thing to look at here is how the two different teams approach the joust. So Flare does end up getting the win here. And they've got the pass down to Voodoo. And Chrome can put it in for a really quick sub 10-second goal off the joust. Now the thing you can look at here is on the mini map, you can see Flare does 2 stacks of 2. So they have the one offensive stack who's coming out of the fart or the left tube. And they're going for the disc, and then they have a back chain, whose purpose is either to, if Flare loses the joust, Kangorillaz wins and Flare loses the joust, this chain's job is to chase the disc after it gets either headbutted or slapped or whatever. And then their purpose, if they win the joust, as you can see here, the joust gets 1, the boost goes 4. One of the players stops here and stuns the Kangorillaz chain out, and the other one goes through. So they have 2 players in the bottom, and they can set up this nice passing sequence that they do. Kangorillaz just, however, is they send 3 people, and they have 1 player who stays back in goal. This is good because even though you can see how Flare's back chain stops and tries to stun out the stack, he does end up getting 1 person, but because Kangorillaz sends 3 people to the joust, they do still have a chain that does try to get back. Unfortunately, they can't get back fast enough, but it is something that they do. Now this is a matter of preference because Kang's ideas when they win the joust is that they both headbutt off of the lower right and lower left parts of double diamonds. So one player bounces down over to here, and the other player bounces down over to the same thing on the other side. This gives the person with the disc options, but if the joust is really close, or if you lose, it's a little bit of a worse option, because I mean, luckily Kang didn't actually do the bounce here, but if they had done the thing they usually do and split up as soon as they get to the disc, this would be a really bad situation for them because it'd take a lot longer for them to get back together and get the boost going, and Flare's offense would have been a little more effective. Also, I think Kangorillaz' joust strategy is a little bit weaker on defense. You can see even though they did get the boost off backwards, they weren't able to get back fast enough, and Flare was still able to get it in. But it's interesting to see how these 2 top teams approach the joust differently and the pros and cons of each. I'll go to the next clip. We have Kangorillaz doing Kangorillaz things and just slowly moving the disc up the field, controlling the disc between each other. This goes down to Sealable, back to Mad, or not back to Leverage in the back, up to Mad, Sealable, and over to, or Sealable into the goal. So they did really good offense there. Something that's a little bit more important to look at, though, is the way the goalie positions during this entire play. So one of Kang's strengths is that all 4 of their players are really good at making these tunnel shots. So once the disc gets there, you kind of either have to play somebody back or play somebody straight up in goal. But at this point, the disc is here. Flare doesn't need to worry about a long shot going in from here unless Kangorillaz clears it and gets really lucky. But there's 2 problems with that. Is again, like, 1, you're playing a really low chance that they clear it and get it in, and 2, if you know Kangorillaz, which if you're Flare you should, they're not going to go for just a random long clear here. They're always going to try to control the disc. That's more of their playbook. And so Flare should not have this player really back here because this player's not doing a whole lot until the disc gets the tunnel, which eventually it does. But the reason that Kang is able to control the disc so nicely is because because this player's still back, they're playing a 3v4 basically. Because this player's covered, this player's getting pressured, this lane is getting kind of covered, but not really. It's not being covered very well, and that means this player's over here is open. Now they don't end up using this player because this coverage again is bad, so they can get it over. But because Kang is playing 4v3, they can just kind of pass around Flare, move the disc up the field, and once they got to this tunnel, then that's the point when the goalie becomes necessary, and that's the point where the offense really takes over. But if you're ever against a team that's playing sort of this control in their own zone, uh, having a goalie isn't really doing much again because they're not like unless you know that the team has a knack for or has a habit of just going for the clear, going for the boost, then having the goalie here isn't going to do a whole lot because they're not really threatening a shot there until this point, and you're just letting the enemy team 4v3 and push up the disc with that. And you see how Kang takes advantage of that. They move forward, they keep the disc control. It was a good read on Grumpy here. As soon as this pass was made, he waited maybe a little bit too long to jump out. He would have had to get obviously for him to be there earlier, he would have had to get a read on the pass because if he jumped out too early, the shot would just go in over his head, over Chrome's head, and over Grumpy. But you need to be a little bit quicker on that. But yeah, their main mistake, Flair's mistake anyway, was not pressuring the Kang hard when they're controlling the disc in their own zone because that's when Kang is not threatening a point there. Next clip. You can see Kangorillaz controlling the disc. Again, doing the same thing. You can see this time, if I go back a little bit here, you can see kind of here that Flair is doing a defensive chain, which is a little bit different than the last play they did, or that we saw anyway. And you can see how Kang deals with it really well because Mad here is not feeling pressure because his chain is here. They've got one player kind of on the far side, and they've got one player in goal. So Mad just holds on to it here. He just holds the disc, he waits, and then as soon as... So he holds here, he waits for pressure. So he's holding the disc, he's waiting for pressure. The chain finally does have to apply pressure because they're behind. They apply pressure, the chain splits a little bit, and Mad's able to get a punch on one of them. All of a sudden the chain is broken, and this defense kind of just falls apart. Now, King does miss the pass there, but it was a really good play up until that point, and just a minor mistake with the pass. They dealt with the defensive chain really well, and they did end up getting back control of the disc. So it was good on Kang for pressuring the defensive chain, and that's why the defensive chain is a little bit harder than most people make it out to be, is because it is easy if you know how to play against it to bait it out, break it apart, and then once the chain's broken, that player's all of a sudden also out of position, and the offense is really easy to do after that point. I'll go to the next clip. Kangorillaz again controlling the disc, moving the disc up. Looks like a 3v, what looks like 2. Really good read from Grumpy. Jumps on the pass, is able to get it out. Unfortunately, Kang is able to intercept the clear. And then passes Strem and then it goes in. Something I wanted to point out that happened here is you can tell that because Grumpy was able to jump out, read the pass to sealable, and get the pass off, that means the Flare they have dialed in that Kang always likes to go for these extra bubble passes. And so they are ready for it. They are able to react to that. So you can see what Kang he does here to adapt, kind of. As you can see, Strem or Sealable floats across. He just punched out somebody, so his position is known for Flare, and he's floating across in their line of sight. While Strem comes from the opposite side, they don't see Strem. They do see Sealable. Sealable is going markedly below Strem, so when they jump out, you can see Chrome jumps out a little bit too low, because he thought that the pass was meant for Sealable when exactly went to Strem, who's just above Sealable. So just a little bit baiting the pass, sort of, baiting the jump, because Kang always likes to go for these close passes in front of the goal. So they bait out who's getting the pass. So you can see this player jumps out a little bit too low. Strem's able to get it and put it in. So it was really good from Kang, able to bait out the jump because they knew it was going to happen. They've already seen it once. So really quick adaptation on the fly from Kang. They did a really good job of getting that goal. You can see the disc gets cleared down in the next clip. Kangorillaz and Flare both racing for it. 2 players on each. Strem slaps the disc over to Leverage. Leverage is able to get the pass over to Strem. He's able to put it in. Now something that a lot of teams here, imagine this is just a generic match between 2 teams who are around, like, let's say, like, silver tier. What happens here for most plays is that Strem got the disc first, or the blue player gets the disc first, got immediately punched. But the difference between a top team and an average team is that because Kangorillaz is able to keep their comms up. They're keeping their teammates updated on their positions constantly. Instead of, because if you think about how many times you've seen a player grab the disc and immediately get punched, and this disc just kind of floats here near their head, they try to headbutt it maybe to try and get it out of orange team's grip, but automatically, eventually orange team does get the disc and is able to regain possession. Because Kang is keeping each other constantly updated on their position, and this is one of Strambitsky's strengths in particular, is even though he only had maybe half a second, if even that, to touch that disc, he still knows where his teammates are going to be and is able to immediately slap the disc because he knows he's going to get punched. He's seen this before, and he's able to slap the disc to his teammate and regain, or I'm not regain, but retain control of the disc, even though he's in a really bad position. He's able to get it to leverage. He's able to get it back to him. He's able to put the disc in. So that's something that you want to know is whenever you're in a position like this, where you're flying in, if I go back to the beginning of the clip, you can see Shum's flying in like right next to somebody. Jumpy's got his shield up, so he can't exactly knock him out to get a free grab on the disc. And so he knows leverage is going to stop here. He's going to slap it backwards. Leverage is going to be able to get up to it, and they're going to be able to get it. So this is really good play from Strum and leverage and all of Kangorillaz really, because they do this a lot. Is just getting keeping each other's positions constantly updated. So even though he's in this high pressure situation where he knows he's only going to have maybe half a second to touch the disc, he's still able to make a good play out of it, retain control, and ultimately ends up a goal for them. Let's go to the next clip. You see Kangorillaz pressuring the bubble offense. They pass the disc between each other. Sealable throws it. A good save off the head of Grumpy. Another ding by Leverage. Sealable gets possession of the disc here, and he passes it back to Matt here. This is something that again, another mistake that a lot of mid-tier teams make is that when they get into these cycles, kind of, like Sealable throws it super close to being a goal. Like that wasn't a save. That was off somebody's head. So still good positioning by putting their bodies between the most common path to the goal. So still definitely good play by the defensive Flare. Leverage again throws it, aims for a pocket, close pocket, dings it off just barely. Sealable unfortunately is able to not to get the grab immediately, but instead of doing what a lot of lower tier or mid tier teams do and taking the disc and going right back in to try to score again, he recognizes that the play is getting getting too pressure. There's 3 players on goal and 1 player on him. They're playing a little bit panicked. He recognizes this and goes for the hard reset, which is something that not a lot of players are willing to do. Not a lot of players can get their heads around because especially in the opposition like they were just in, it's really easy to get kind of panicked, kind of caught up in the moment, and just be doing rapid shots on the goal. Which I mean, eventually it might go in, but in the position Sealable was in, he had a player on him. Off the second one, he had a player on him. He had people in goal, so he just went for the quick reset. That gives Kang enough time to resort themselves, position themselves properly, and then Sealable is able to get the disc back off the backboard and put it in. So it was really good on Kang for recognizing that they were getting a little bit panicked. They were missing their shots. The saves were happening. There was a really big cluster on the goal, and just resetting the disc, spreading out themselves, spreading out Flare. And once you're in a position like that where you're a little bit more spread out, you can see it's easier to find holes in the defense. Maybe this player's open. This player's a little bit open since since Chrome's not grabbing onto anything. And that way they can make these plays happen. They can look for these holes in the defense once they open them up and make the play happen. Last clip of this video. This gets cleared by Kangorillaz, picked up by Voodoo on the ceiling, clears it, does end up getting picked, but Grumpy is able to regain the disc and clear it back out for Flare. So this is again another mistake that a lot of mid-tier teams make that Flare does a really good job of not making and really recognizing the danger that could happen here. Is so a lot of times when a position like this occurs specifically, this player will jump up and try to grab on to this player so they can clear it, get a boost immediately. They can get down there first. They can get the goal. That's a lot of players' ideas. That's what they're thinking. Grumpy, however, doesn't do that. He pushes off the ceiling, goes back, and he stays in goal. So in case the clear doesn't work out, like it didn't, he's still in goal. He's still ready. He's not going to give away a free 3-pointer. Because the 3-pointer in this position kind of puts Flare behind. There's not a whole lot of time left, so it's definitely a worse position to be in. But he recognizes that not every clear is going to get out, and so he does stay in goal. He's able to get the disc, and he's able to make a pass to his teammate, who's then able to clear it out, and then Flair can go on the offense. So really good play from Grumpy, recognizing that not getting too anxious and going for the boost, and instead staying back, staying on defense, waiting until the disc is totally out of the zone before he makes a clear. That's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Again, I do recommend going to watch this whole VOD because it did go to game 3. It was a super close game, super exciting to watch. Probably one of the most hype matches of the season so far. And that's it. Have a nice day.